La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
Get out the matrix and live.
You know what day it is? Inner Wealth Podcast. Meditate and give. So manifest the greater this. And things all good cause I say it is. Invest in your inner wealth. Real generational wealth is mental health. It's an inside game, no toxicity. Let's talk and more listening. Ladies and gentlemen, and now introducing David McCullar, founder of Inception, the first mental health gym.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
Get out the matrix and live.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Inner Wealth Podcast. Got a very special guest today, my homie John Morgan. What up, though?
How you feeling, man?
Doing great, man.
Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
For sure. Live Your Purpose Podcast.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, Live Your Purpose Podcast. How did you come up with that?
I'm laughing because I've been getting that question a lot lately, and I tell people all the time, man, it's been a life journey getting to this point of like being intentional of doing my own work and my own healing, and that's what led me to the brand of Live Your Purpose and doing the work with the podcast. All of this started from going within first, and living my own true self,
Right.
and being intentional about wanting to look at my own life, my own family, my own dynamics. So it started there. That is the origin. The origin is I wanted to be intentional about doing my own work, which started with going to therapy. And I've been going to therapy now for 3-4 years now. And from there, and just awakening myself, my consciousness rising and, going through my healing process, it led me to really want to continue to invest in myself in every aspect, which meant really betting on myself as an entrepreneur. And that's how the podcast formulation kind of, begun. It really started with my own healing process.
That's typically how it starts in terms of getting into the field, because you're a social worker, right? So how long have you been a social worker?
So I was a social worker, man, for seven years. Yep.
7?
Yep.
What type of work, social work?
So I predominantly work within school-based services. I worked in elementary schools, junior high schools, high schools. I did case management in community mental health organizations. I worked at the Boys and Girls Club for a small stint at a teen club, doing some managing stuff there. So I've been in the field for 7-8 years totally.
Yeah, my mom was, she's a social worker.
Blessings to her.
Been in the field she was in the field for 20 years. Last episode we just did, we talked about a lot of the, things that she saw in schools. And so what are some of the things you saw and how did you help out with that?
So when I initially started doing case management in the high school settings, I was working collectively with therapists, and what we would do is we would help once the kids or the families were created a diagnosis, we would help them come up with like different goals and objectives to help them to manage their diagnosis and to manage their symptoms and things like that. Ultimately, and also help give services to like families as well, their families. So if they needed connection to like different things within the community, whether that was work, whether that was food, whether that was shelter, whether that was anything, any type of needs that they needed, we would be the bridge to kind of connect not only our clients but their families to them as well, to try to really decrease the symptoms in home as a whole, right?
Right.
But one thing that I learned quickly from working within the school system is that the behaviors that we would see within the school system and that we would see in the day-to-day at the school was a symptom of the things that we were seeing at home. So we would see kids have problems with whether it was academics, whether it was fighting, whether if it was just like relationships with the teachers, with their peers. You would see them get in trouble for that in the building. right? And what I would come in at would talk with the teachers and the administrators and people of the school system. I would let them know, like, listen, this individual is struggling. They have some concerns. They have some mental health concerns that we're working on. The school system is completely set up to disregard any of that.
But you're there as a social worker.
Correct.
So
Correct.
Isn't that
counterproductive? Correct. But again, I want to emphasize the school system.
System.
That isn't. I'm not talking about necessarily the individuals. You have individuals who are in the building who are there to try to, work with you and work with the students. But the system is not set up for that. The system is set up for you to be programmed, for you to come in, you take in the information they get, you go off into the world, you be an employee the way they want you to be, and that's it. And shut up and keep it moving. And when you do anything to disrupt that, you got to go.
So how did that affect you in terms of moral injury and knowing that?
So it's crazy, man, because I've always been a somewhat of a self-aware person, which I think has allowed me to be pretty empathetic. My mother was my mother and my family dynamics, my people were always pretty kind, you know what I'm saying, for the most part, even though I was exposed to people, dealing with their own stuff and their own trauma. I always understood that my family and my people were very kind people. So I think because of that, naturally, it made me a naturally empathetic person. So when it came to like work and it came to, working with kids specifically, I always empathize, with the children, and I always empathize with their family. But when you are working in a system that is, again, working that's counterproductive, the work that you're trying to do, but although they're telling you that they want you to do it, but the system is not right. It's not set up for that. It is a very, very tough place to be. So for me, it would make me feel like, all right, am I really helping? Am I really making an impact here? Or am I spinning my wheels? Am I caught up in the matrix? Am I not really seeing, the big picture here? Am I just a figurehead for what they want it to be? Am I really making an impact? And, again, going through my own healing process, what I had to learn was, number one, is that I really don't have as much control over the situation as I thought. Right. Number one. So which meant that I had to accept, people's lives and lifestyles and just, the things that they were dealing with. A lot of that was out of my hands. And as long as I did my part from a genuine standpoint, I walk with integrity, I did my best, then I would have to live with the results. But that is a hard place to come through when you are seeing constant trauma all day, every day. And the one thing, and my wife told me this too, the one thing that I learned from being in the school system is we always hear people talk about their traumatic situation that happened to them in childhood, right? The one thing that I never forgot when I worked in the schools with children is I'm seeing their childhood traumatic experience happen in live time.
Right.
So I'm seeing stuff that's going to impact them 10, 15, 20, maybe 30 years down the line. I'm seeing it in real time every day.
You're witnessing them have traumas? Is
Yep, I'm witnessing them have traumatic experiences, whether that's, being severely mistreated by the teachers.
Right.
If that's, being, dealing with traumatic experiences at home. If that's dealing with traumatic experiences with their peers. I'm seeing it every day. And that's a tough thing to take in for anybody. I don't care what type of, what type of work you do on yourself. If you seeing that every day, that's going to have an impact on you. And I was seeing it affect my moods. It was affecting how I was going into my day. And I'm a person who tries to pride myself on like taking care of myself the best way I can. But when you taking in that type of energy every day, it can get you, man.
Yeah, my mother, one time she came home from school and she was throwing up, like, cause you like you said, that energy and her system, her school system, it was a charter school, so they have more ability to do outside of the system because it's almost kind of its own little system. Yeah. But you still have these elements that are there, and you have an element where you're the only one with the common sense. Not the teachers. Well, why is he acting out? Why is that kid acting out? Well, he just saw his uncle hung himself.
Bingo.
But no, he's like, but you're the only one with the common sense.
Man, this kid ain't even had dinner last night. This kid ate hot Cheetos for dinner last night.
Right.
And you talking about this kid not paying attention in class? This kid have what you consider to be an attitude.
Right. You've heard of ACEs. Adverse childhood experience.
Yes.
So, and that was mainly, I think they took a number of like 17,000 people in San Diego, and it was predominantly middle class white people.
Right.
And they were talking about the traumas they experienced, and me and my mom went over this in that last episode. And then she was naming the questions, because it's 10 questions that determine whether you has suffered an adverse childhood experience. And if you have anything over the number 2 or 3, you're more susceptible to have all these type of chronic illnesses. And she named one, which is like, has your parent like thrown something at you or smacked you or something? And I was just like, damn, man, that's all of black people.
Right. Facts. That's a fact.
And it's like, so when you look at that scenario or these scenarios, and you look at our culture, black culture, bro, we're not well.
Right. That's it.
You just said you see from the trauma, and you see how that pattern is going to divert them into very specific things in their lives. And
that's can I curse on here?
Yeah.
And that's fucked up. That is fucked up when you see a 9-year-old and you can see, man, they're not gonna have a chance.
Or they're gonna have a harder chance.
Right.
The thing is, see, trauma, we can't stop trauma.
Correct.
But we can regulate it from it. And that's why I feel like for what I do, I'm trying to help people to regulate.
Correct.
And a lot of people regulating for the first time since the trauma they experienced.
Yes.
Right. And and that's a big deal for us. But yeah, that's for you to take that in, to see that. And so we talked about the professionals first. Let's talk about you being a social worker, because I don't know many men social work, and part of that probably comes from the empathetic upbringing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's so wild, how much my life is kind of just unfolding and just kind of taking a step back and just seeing how it's, played a part. Because listen, man, the majority of my life coming up, it was just sports. You know what I'm saying? That was my way. That was my understanding and my way of knowing how to quote unquote get out or to make it. Right. So coming up, it was sports. It was playing basketball. It was playing football. But I quickly learned as a high school student, it's a super small percentage of people who make it big time D1, let alone to the NBA, let alone to the NFL and things like that, right? And I actually, when I graduated high school and going to college, an ex-girlfriend, her mother actually was just like, John, I know you don't necessarily know what you're trying to do with your life, you know what I'm saying, but you should really consider going into the field of social work. There's a super big need for men in this field, especially black men in this field. You can make a decent amount of living, and you enjoy, helping people. You are empathetic with people. You love people. Check it out. And I trusted her, so I was like, all right, let me go ahead and do it. And I connected with people in my walk and in my journey of going to school who really poured into me and, let me understand the power that could be within the field. But I quickly learned that being a social worker, it don't have shit to do with the stuff that I learned in school, man. I was in classes, I'm talking about big time college courses, listening to people, and I could tell you don't give a damn about people. I would hear them talk. You could feel those type of things in the class. I would be listening to my college professors. I'm like, you've never had a conversation with no little dude from the hood. His dad is in jail. His mom may be struggling, with substance or whatnot. You have no idea what that's about. You have no reference point of what it's really like to deal with, in the environments that we're coming from. So from that, I knew that my experiences is what would help me connect with people who I was working with, because that's what that's what social worker, any type of service work is really about. It's really seeing you in them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's really being able to understand or, put yourselves in their shoes, so to speak, or just to be able to really empathize. And that's what I think helped me, in the field. But it also helped me understand that, listen, if I really want to make a larger impact, if I really want to, continue to live my true self, I have to think outside of this traditional system of, what is a traditional 9-to-5 or this traditional, this traditional workforce.
And I think about it from when we talk about systems that are created, like for instance, what you're talking about is the school system.
Yep.
Then you talk about the system of the school system on both ends, being educated about how to deal with issues, right? And then you go into a workforce and you're being indoctrinated on what you really can do and can't do, which is almost nothing.
Man, here's the thing about that. As social workers, right? We're operating off of when you become a licensed social worker, you operate what is called a code of ethics, right? And it's just a bunch of listing rules of values and principles and things that you're supposed to abide by to uphold your moral code as a social worker, right? So, for example, if you're working with a child, and let's say this child tells you that they are, experiencing some severe traumatic experience at home, and like, let's just say that, listen, my mom, they're telling you that their mother is selling drugs to make a living and whatnot. Mom might even smoke a little weed sometimes, whatever, the coping. Just, we know people who smoke weed and,
Right.
who hustle to make a living in our environments. Technically, under the social work code of ethics, I'm supposed to report that information
Right.
to CSB. Now, me, being a black man and understanding that, listen, we have come up in an environment where we do what we have to do to survive. That doesn't mean that this parent is that's technically neglecting their child, but that's counterproductive to what this system tells you is a good parent. Now, you report that information to CSB, there's going to be, there's going to be some level of response, whether that's a case open. It may not necessarily always, look like a child being removed from the house, but still, just the mere fact of reporting that information to CSB compromises the relationship that I have with that parent. Now, how am I effectively able to do my job effectively if my job is really built off the relationship that I have with people, if it's compromised because I had to share some information?
Because you had the snitch.
Bingo.
Yeah. I mean, because if you go down that road, how many people they taking away, kids from, and then taking it away and doing what and going where and experiencing what?
Yep.
More trauma, right?
Yep.
So, in the social work field, what I've noticed from people that I've met, my mom have met, and I'm just like, do you really know what you're doing in that field? It's a lot of people got into it for some money and they didn't realize, like, you got to do your own internal work if you think this is going to work at all.
That's it.
So when you start doing social work, how soon after did you get yourself into therapy?
Man, it didn't happen right away. You know what I'm saying? Because I even, listen, I was naive coming into it, to be completely honest. I came into it thinking that, listen, I'm just going to help people do my job and, make my bread and go home. That's what I thought it was just going to be, simple as that. But again, when you see people who look just like you, who have had the same experiences, man, it does something to you spiritually. It does something to your spirit. It does something to your mind, to where I knew that, like, yo, I'm going to work and I'm working, with kids and their families, and I'm going right home. I'm like, damn, I remember going through that. I remember experiencing that. So it was maybe 2 years into doing the job to where I realized, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go talk to somebody. Now, granted, my situation was different because I was blessed to be connected to a community mental health organization that I ultimately ended up working at in Akron, that all black agency. And the way that we were trained and educated on the world of mental health and psychology, it was from a African Center standpoint, which ultimately teaches that when we as African people live by certain African centered values, it helps us live our true selves and decreases the mental health symptoms that we have. Right. So I was exposed and given information a much different level than the majority of people would be. So because of that, because I was receiving that information, I knew that, okay, this is something that I wasn't resistant to it. I can completely understand why somebody who is not exposed to that level of information just hear somebody say, hey, go talk to somebody, why that can just sound that doesn't read to me. That doesn't connect with my normal way of life. But for me, I was blessed. I was privileged to be connected to that. And not to mention, I began dating would be my wife at this time. Now, granted, my wife is dope too because she's a psychologist, but she was never the person that was like pushing therapy on me or any of that. Matter of fact, I told her myself, like, yo, I want to go talk to somebody. She just said, good, supported me all the way. So I was blessed, you know what I'm saying, to say the least. But because of that, I went ahead and went and started doing my own work. And I would advise anybody, maybe not only, but start your journey of therapy, and hopefully that would evolve and snowball into you, picking up other methods of healing.
When you talk about live your purpose, and we talk about trauma, and we talk about therapy, if you stack these pieces up here, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we've read the books, Purpose Driven Life. You've been in the churches, your purpose.
Yeah.
Trauma blocks your purpose. And therapy will help you to shine a light on that trauma, on that unconsciousness, to help you reconnect back to your purpose. And the word therapy doesn't just mean talk therapy. Therapy can be inclusive of, man, you can throw 20 different things
true, bro.
in that pot of therapy.
That's so true.
But for us, I think that, because a lot of people thought I was against talk therapy because I promote a lot of alternative things. It's like, no, it's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that ain't the only tool. Because that being as the main tool that's pushing people, because you want the therapy, but you still can't sleep at night, I have an issue.
Right.
Because your therapist can take you so far away. Physiologically, she can't help your brain and your body come back down to parasympathetic.
Very true.
You're stuck. So you need some other tools, and that's what we do at Inception, use these other tools. And now you go back to the therapist, all of a sudden, that information she's been trying to get out of you for the last 2 years come
right out. Yeah.
Spilling out. It come out in Inception.
For sure.
Like they talking, they vomiting.
Right.
All the emotional stuff because it was stuck under there.
Yeah.
And I found that, through all that purpose-driven life books and all these self-help books, like, man, all these answers are literally sitting on the inside of you. But if you don't take the opportunity to shine the light on your unconsciousness, then you just the blind living the blind.
That's
the blind.
That's beautifully said, man. One thing that I've been getting a lot of, like, my homeboys are just like, people that I grew up with, because I'm vocal about this stuff, even on my podcast. It's just, listen, man, in regular conversations, if I'm just kicking it with my homeboys, I'm checking in with them, like, man, how you doing, genuinely? How are you? So a lot of people have been asking me, like, man, how do I get connected to therapy, or, like, how do I get connected to some psychological podcasts and stuff to listen to and whatnot? And I give people information, but I'm always quick to tell people, I'm saying, listen, man, the information is good. The books are terrific. All of that stuff is terrific. But you got to do your own work, bruh.
Yeah.
You got to do this shit. This is work. You got to look within. You got to sit with yourself. This ain't no fairy tale, bro. This is not pretty. I heard somebody say one time that, like, healing is dark. Like, this shit is hard. It's hard work, and it is. And I tell people all the time that, like, man, it sounds good to, you know, to be getting healing, and it sounds good to be
Till
feeling
your shit
good.
come up and you gotta process it.
Bingo.
Till those emotions come up and you gotta feel them.
Then you realizing, like, oh, you know, maybe I don't really want to be with this person that I'm with, you know.
That's another thing.
You know, maybe I don't really like this career path that I'm in. Maybe I haven't been the best spouse or the best parent. You know what I'm saying? And that's the type of stuff that hits you when it's like,
maybe I gotta create some boundaries of some people, specifically blood relatives that's been taking advantage of you, and you've been codependent to them for years.
Man, I'll keep it on myself. You know, one thing that I learned recently is that I'm very good at communication. Like, I'm very good at, you know, communicating my thoughts and my feelings, and, you know, even listening for the most part. But one of the things that I really, really struggle with is having environments where I feel safe to share where I am emotionally. You know, that has always been a place of just in my communication that I struggled in. So it showed myself in, like, resisting, or, you know, shutting down, or, like, you know, even angry, or just, like, you know, blowing people off, or just, you know, being rude. And recently, you know, I've had to come to the conclusion that, like, it's my job to set the boundaries. It is on me and my responsibility to let people know of what I'm experiencing and what I need and what I want and what I deserve in the moment. And from that, what happens from that is on me. But that part is on me.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's the part that, you know, I'm still in the process of trying to figure out. And that's the part that shit is not easy. You know what I'm saying? But it's one of the things that I want to, you know, continue to work on. You know, I got a son, man, you know, who I'm trying to mold to have a certain amount of emotional intelligence, you know.
Yeah.
He's only 18 months, and we're pouring in affirmations every day. You know what I'm saying? It's just certain things that I want to be intentional about that I know that's going to have a trickle-down effect on people outside of myself.
And people hear me talk about, you know, because we talk about breaking generational curses and things of that nature now, and it's just like, you break that through the internal.
Yep.
You know, it's not running to get the money, because it's something you said about, you know, certain people, D1 athletes and all them, make it. And then I'm sitting here, I'm like, and what does that mean? Because you made it. Because where did you make it to?
Right.
But you made it into a different income bracket that can change drastically. And then where are you? Did you not make it? You know?
Right.
So if you got there and you not there, did you not? You didn't make it.
Right.
What did you make it to?
Right.
Made it to a different income bracket, but at the same time, internally, you the same.
Right.
But they say you can take the nigga out the ghetto.
Can't take the ghetto out of him. That's a fact.
But I do believe that's incorrect. I do believe we can retrain. I do believe that we can move from post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth. But like you said, man, that ain't pretty. You got to do some work.
Yeah.
And it's not through the... if information was the answer... Bro, we literally, like, in the last... Google just recently stated within the last 2 years... more information has been created in the last 2 years than all of humanity combined in the last 2 years. And I want to talk to you specifically about this.
How do you create new information? What does that mean?
Well, think about, like, every podcast you put out is a piece of content.
Got it.
You know? Mm-hmm. Because back in the day, they said you want to hire something from a black person and put it in a book. Now what? Now what?
Right.
It's all exposed now. So it's a choice to be ignorant in an age of information.
Got it.
So if you're not gravitating to certain information now, that's just what? That's all mindset, right? Because only certain people going to gravitate to your podcast and my podcast.
That's right.
Most people, man, what them dudes talk about?
That's
Man,
a fact.
your purpose, inner wealth. What you
Yeah.
talk about? Empathetic. What are you talking about?
Right.
Right? And it's just like, we're at a stage, it's getting real goofy. You said it on camera, it's getting real goofy where the information now, man, is just yesterday I was sitting and I felt burnt out. I had to like stop. I'm like, bro, I can't take in any more.
Yeah.
Growing up, did your mom did she shield you against like you can eat so much of that sugary snack, or
Yeah, man. It's my mother transitioned last year in 2020, and I feel like since she's transitioned, it's gonna sound crazy, but I've learned so much more about her now because I reflect so much back on childhood, and just I have a better understanding of today, way more than I did as a child. I wouldn't consider my mother to be, she wasn't very intentional, but my mother was she tried hard to get me to see the big picture. And it didn't always come in the form of where she communicated it the best. But she spoke in a way with so much wisdom that she would say things like, listen, you have to be a leader because other people depend on that. You know what I'm saying? Like she would really get upset with me when she would see me doing things that she would consider to be a follower, or when I wasn't really truly being myself. She's like, listen, you cannot just do anything because everybody else is doing that. You're different. And I would get upset, but as I got older, and especially now, I understood that she was trying to get me to understand that, like, listen, I got intrinsic power in me that, like, if I'm slipping, then the people that I care about are going to be impacted by that. You know what I'm saying? So she was, my mother was very wise, man. And I also learned, my mom, she was dealt with a lot of her own stuff as well, which, man, that's been one of the key components for me, in my own healing, is like how much forgiveness that I've had to give my parents, coming up in the 90s and the early 2000s, listen, man, we still was impacted by our parents, coming from the era of where, whoopings was a thing, or like, getting cussed out was a thing. And, they were just trying to survive. That was just a thing, dealing with abuse and things like that. For me, I had to really sit back and empathize with my parents because they just was doing the best of what they had, man.
Of what they knew.
That's it. That was it.
Yeah. And now we have a generation that's, the next generation of that, trying to do the best they can with what they know. But now this totally different dynamics. I'm telling you, going back to this internet thing, this thing is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, you see what happened when it shut down for
goodness,
12 hours or however long it was, people losing their minds. How has that been impacting you in being in this space now, in this new world of the internet?
Man, honestly, man, it has its pros and cons. It has its pros because I was just talking to a good friend of mine yesterday, matter of fact. Again, man, I've been saying it a couple times throughout here, is that I really try to pride myself on taking care of myself for the most part. I got a solid foundation. My wife don't care nothing about none of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Me and her have real conversations and things like that. So I have a solid foundation away from the internet and just away from the masses, right? And, prior to even like starting the podcast and getting on social media, like I was one of those dudes who was completely off the grid. Like I didn't even really rock with the internet like that. But in building a brand and building a platform and, building a business, it goes hand in hand. So from that standpoint, it's tough, man, because I have to find myself of like just staying tunnel vision and just running my own race. Because I can find myself sometimes, man, I'm not absent from, getting caught up in my own ego, and, I find myself comparing myself. I look at my YouTube podcast numbers and I'm like, man, I know my content on point. I know the shit that I'm talking about is powerful. You know what I'm saying? Why is mine, not as high as such and such, or whatever the case may be? And I had to check myself, and pull myself back and like, listen, man, pull yourself out of your ego. What about those 25 people who just told you over the last week how much they really enjoy what you're doing and things like that, you know. So it's a constant battle of just
it's
like
interesting how those little numbers, like 25 people who like your stuff. If 25 people fill this room up, you'd be like, wow,
that's huge, right?
But
the 25 numbers on YouTube, I'm like, man, what, man, I should have 5,000.
You look how the internet diminishes people.
Oof. That's powerful.
It diminishes you.
That's big.
So now
powerful,
the one comment, and after a while, what happens is what I've noticed as my numbers have grown, people have become faceless.
Oof.
They become faceless. They just become like almost like a bot. You know, on the other side there's an entity on there, but it don't feel like that because when you get hit with a flood of numbers, I saw my page grow at 2,000. I was like you. I wasn't even on there, bro. I was just running my business. And people was like, man, you got to get on here. You got to do that. I'm like, why? It's like, what am I talking about? So I got on there, and then, you know, some stuff went viral. And next, you know, I literally saw my page go from like 1,700 followers to like 12,000 in like 2 days. And I just remember sitting looking and kept opening my phone. It was just dopamine.
Wow.
My brain is just on dopamine, inboxes. Oh, hey, and it's just like, oh, man. Now to the point again, my inbox, man, I can't answer everybody in the inbox. Because now it's like people, they want to attach to you and they want to pull something from you because they feel like you got something that they don't have. And that goes back to living your purpose. And it's like, no, man, you got to go inward. Like, you're not going to get it from me.
Yeah.
You ain't going to get it from the podcast. I can spark you, but you still got to go inward to do the work. But it goes back down to this thing where people are becoming faceless and just becoming numbers.
So what do you think, man? Do you think that people can find genuine relationships from the internet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hear.
I do too. Yeah.
You hear.
Right.
You can. The internet is just a resource.
Yeah, right.
It's just a tool.
Just a tool.
How
Correct.
you decide to use it is a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
But if you empty, the resource is going to try to be the way to try to fill yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? I'm empty.
Yeah.
And that's the resource. And ooh.
Right.
And in that thing too, that resource, it's a bottomless pit. You can go on forever with trying to get more and more and more. Yeah. Because you can always find somebody. I found somebody who was at the Ronaldo, the soccer player, got like 200 something million followers.
I think he's the highest, has the highest followers.
And it's just like, how do you even compute that?
Right.
Like literally any post he does, he can easily go make probably a couple $1 million just from posts. Like, hey, I got these socks.
Right.
It's like, I'm going to buy those socks.
Right.
But at the same time, it just shows you the illness. It shows you the illness, man, when you really can wake up and see, like, why is what he says so important to you? Why are these people so important to you? Because again, go back to that empty pit. Yeah, it's the Wizard of Oz. It's like, hey, that's the wizard, and you know he can show me the way home. And like, no, the only way you're gonna get home is through the inward work.
Right.
So this is the game that we're playing, but we've been playing the same thing offline. Yeah, it's just a different form of it now. Mm-hmm. You heard the term "keeping up with the Joneses" and stuff like that. That always been something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess when you put it like that, I mean, it's always been there. I mean, marketing has always been what it is. You know, marketing has been, listen, let's do this to get these responses from people's brains because there's data that shows we can get them to behave this way if we do.
I tell you, it's much worse though. Because it's exponentially worse.
It's way worse.
Because you see the whistleblower that just came out, right?
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, duh. Everything she was saying, I'm like, you didn't need to tell me that.
That's not new information.
Right. Like, duh. Yeah. Like, the young women, suicide rates for them are higher because, I mean, you go look at these pages and I look at some of these people, I'm like, how did you even get that picture taken?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that shit is perfectly laid out. Like, it's like, How did you get that picture taken?
Yeah.
How did you? And I know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're dopamine hunters.
That's it, man. That's it.
Dopamine hunters hunting for the next fix.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's sad, man. It really is. You know, it really is. And again, going back to, you know, doing the work as a social worker in the schools, they have it. You know, the children have it even different because at least, you know, people like you and myself, we remember a world pre-internet.
Yeah.
You know, I can still disconnect and still be cool. Like, you know what I'm saying? I can still delete the apps on my phone and, you know, get away from the social media, and I can, you know, enjoy a conversation and enjoy life. You know what I'm saying? Type of thing. These kids come out the womb
with the tablet.
You know, so they got it different, man.
Yeah, I don't even know what that's gonna do to our brains because again, we can't adapt fast enough to be able to take this amount of information in.
That's it.
So I was going back to that one statement I said, you know, did your mom stop you from eating sugary drinks? Or like it's like whoever it was, they policed your consciousness to a degree so that you would create self-destructive habits.
So that's what my mother did do that, man. My mother did shield me, you know, because my dad struggled with substances the majority of my life. But my dad was a real good dude. You know, my grandfather struggled with alcohol. My uncle struggled with substances. My mother, in her later life, before she passed away, and as I got older, I would have conversations about why she did some of the things that she did. You know, she put me in what people would consider to be good schools. I went to private school, you know, as a child. I went to, when my mother got remarried, we moved to the suburbs, and I went to, you know, a school that was predominantly white. But the environments were just much different than, you know, the public school system. So my mom, she knew to, like, put these shields around me to give me a chance, you know, because she knew that how easily the tugs and pulls of life could lead me to doing something different. And I think that she knew the big picture that, like, listen, if I put him in environments of where he's able to, like, be exposed to different things, you know, see that, you know, he can be around these white kids, you know, who coming from these super rich backgrounds, but they ain't no better than him. Right. You know, he is just as good, if not better, when it comes to a competition standpoint and whatnot. If I can put him in these environments, then he can thrive and he can survive and he can excel. You know, so she always seen the big picture. She just wasn't the best at communicating what she was doing. But I would ask her, I'm like, you know, why'd you put me in those, you know, those private schools with them racist teachers? And she would laugh. She was like, well, you know, I wanted you to get a good education. You know, I wanted you to be in an environment where you could actually learn. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a bunch of people just fighting in the classroom or, you know, it was, you know, with some level of structure. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to give you a shot, you know, is what she said, you know. So my mom was super, like, she was, again, she was very wise and just understanding the big picture of this game, you know what I'm saying? And I, you know, give her a lot of props for that, because there's no way that I'll be sitting here having this conversation, you know, with this amount of consciousness today at 32 without my mother, you know what I'm saying? So big shout out to moms.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, same thing. My mom and my dad, actually, I could call them first generation consciousness, because they was the first generation to realize that, you know what we're doing is not cool.
Yeah.
Now, you know, we talk about substance, like that just run through my whole family, substance, right? Yeah. But then when we talk about substance too, just as a word, and I just like to really clarify that it's not the substance. It's not why the substance, is why the pain. And our people are in a lot of pain. Yep.
And you know what? And I'm glad you corrected me on that, because, you know, my first podcast guest that I had was with my father. And that was very intentional, because I had to forgive and understand my father as well. And man, one thing that I learned in having my father on my podcast first, you know, because we went through his whole story. Man, my father experienced a hell of a lot of pain at a very young age, a lot of traumatic experiences at a super young age. I'm talking about by the time he was like 12 years old, he had seen people get killed in front of him. You know, he had his house had caught on fire as a child. You know, he had lost his father at a young age. A lot of, you know, pain and a lot of trauma that he had experienced. And, you know, he ultimately ended up getting caught up, you know, in his environment and things like that. And it led me to, you know, feeling neglected in some ways. But I always still felt in the midst of that, you know, my dad, he loved me. He was a good dude. My dad never like got on me crazy or anything like that. So I knew there was something there. And as we've gotten older and I've been able to understand, man, that's my guy. You know what I'm saying? Me and my dad talk all the time. And like one thing that we talk about constantly now is like, I tell him all the time, like, bruh, I'm super proud of where you are today. My dad is like, I think he like 6-7 years sober now, like in the best health of his life. Like, you know what I'm saying? Raising his kids. Like we have fruitful conversations often, you know what I'm saying? And I'm super blessed to like, you know, my dad checks you out, you know what I'm saying? He checks Charlamagne out. Like my dad is one of them dudes who I get wisdom and gain from. So like, even though he went through some stuff, man, those experiences helped me in their own way too. So for sure.
And that's one thing I think people would get as they start to do the work is the empathy for our people. And when you can start to understand that, you know, people just acting out like some of the stuff they've seen and experienced is nothing personal. It's just, man, life.
Yeah.
In our society, and specifically again to our culture, and I've been around other cultures, but we got something different going on. You know, we got something different going on where the trauma is ongoing. You know, and it's chronic. You know, you go to Chicago, you see so many people die within a weekend, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, how did that many people did they get? Was it a mass shooting?
Yeah.
It was like 60 different incidents of people being shot and killed.
And now Chicago's trauma, Chicago's murders it's become a market for that on the internet for people to monetize that content. You have big businesses on Reddit, like there's people who have made big time platforms off of covering this stuff. You talking about kids in the suburbs who don't know nothing about what's going on in Chicago, but they've been able to monetize huge platforms off of talking about the killings and the murder that's going on. So this you seeing that today, which is mind blowing. You know what I'm saying? And very much that is that is not a coincidence that, you know, that type of stuff is going on. Like these type of, you know, this type of violence and these type of like pain is going on in these environments. You know, Chicago, for people who know, Chicago has a rich history. You know what I'm saying? Like a rich Black history.
Right.
So to see what it has become today is not by coincidence by any means.
And Detroit has always been like that too.
Yep. Detroit is very much synonymous in that way.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have as many people getting killed, but Detroit has always had its things, man. And it goes right back down to the pain. It's just pain spilling out into the streets. Everybody like to make it think it's about there's no job opportunities. And that's a symptom of something.
People be hurting, man.
But I like to go back to the root. Because you can, if you're stuck in survival mode, man, your resources, your external resources, whether your job, your money and all that, that's your external resources you go to do. But your internal resources, when you ain't got that, man, call it a day. Call it a day. You can't even sleep. You know, your body can't even heal itself. You can't even have a conscious conversation. So you can't go be resourceful like maybe the people in Africa. Who go see, them tires on the road, I'm about to take them tires and make shoes out of them.
Right,
you know?
Right.
Oh, I'm about to take this old compact computer and start mining Bitcoin. We all got access to this device that has a limited amount of information, but if your resources, internal resources, what are you going to even look at?
Right. Which shows itself in an unhealthy coping. You know, we see the drug abuse, alcohol abuse, which shows itself in abuse, which shows itself in unhealthy relationships. It shows itself in all these ways you're talking about right now. So you're right, man. The pain and the hurt, you know, people, we going through it, man.
And here you go. What you do and what you've been doing, you do your own work. You got your own podcast that's trying to connect people back through living to their purpose by telling other people's stories of purpose, right? And you got these things, and it should be thousands of people subscribe to your show, listening to it But the same thing with Inception. Should be a line wrapped around the building. The problem is the programming is so strong on what you really need to feel better about yourself. You need a Birkin bag, and you need you need a BBL, and they really target the women.
Yeah,
the women, and they really target them with that because men, what we do for women in mind in general.
Right.
So if a woman like it, then I like it.
We all over it, yeah.
But if you don't like it, then okay, then maybe not. Right.
Right. Facts.
But women is a whole different ball game of how they're conditioned and how they, it's like, no, they attacked all different angles. Your hair ain't long enough. Your eyelashes ain't long enough. Your butt ain't big enough.
Right.
Your bag ain't nice enough. Your lips ain't big enough. And then let's throw a filter on top of all of that. Plus your beating and your makeup. And it's like, whoa, who is that person? You went into witness protection. We don't even know who you are anymore because the society has conditioned you that you need to be somebody other than who you are.
Right.
Right. You need to be somebody different. You can't be you.
Yeah.
You not good enough.
Yep. That's it.
And then they go look at their page and they got a reminder. Nope, you not look good enough. You only got 1,500 followers when so and so got 20 million. You ain't nobody.
Right.
And the root under all of that is the pain. Because if the pain ain't there, you don't care about none of that.
Right. Man, you messed me up with that number. With the number when you said that. Look how we look at the numbers. You said if it was 25 people in here, it's like, oh, it's packed.
Right.
But you see 25 views on a YouTube page or 25
you
likes.
Mad.
You saw it. You like, man, what?
Yeah.
That's big. I ain't gonna forget that, man. You messed me up with that.
Look at those likes. Understand them. Those are real human people who liking your stuff. And I said that to you. I'm saying it to me too.
Right.
Like, man, you got 25 people.
Right.
I mean, going to the Invest Fest, people just was coming up to me like, man, that one podcast you did with your mom, that changed my life.
Wow.
I mean, thug niggas too.
Yeah.
Like you would never expect coming to you. Like bros coming up to me from looking like they from New York, Tim's on like, bro.
Right.
And I'm like, yo. That one person.
That's powerful, man.
That one person.
That's powerful.
Because now that number doesn't seem like this digitized non-human being.
Yep.
You seen the Squid Game thing?
So I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
But over literally like the last 4 days, I've heard it more the last 3-4 days than I ever heard it in my life. My niece was telling me about it a couple of days. She like,
it desensitizes humanity. Once you go watch it from an experiment.
You finished it?
Yes. Go watch it from a humanity experiment, a psychological experiment. Because how you look at things and how we look at things totally different because we looking at it from a psychological standpoint. I ain't never seen nothing that brutal, bro. Since,
really, man?
I was watching Walking Dead back in the day, and I remember there was some brutal parts of that. But this, bro, I went to sleep, and it was popping up in my dreams, bro.
Oh, man.
It's some brutal
it's intense
stuff
like that.
It's intense, and it desensitizes humanity, really, because I was like, man, are they trying to set us up for something? Because this show is pretty brutal,
That's not a coincidence, man. Listen, I'm gonna take your advice because the last show you had me on was Westworld.
Oh yeah, so how did that go? Did you?
So
what'd you end
season
up?
1 was fantastic.
Okay.
Season 2. I didn't even make it through it, man.
Oh,
I didn't even finish it. But season 1 was phenomenal. That's one of those ones.
Yeah.
Where like, oh no, this is different.
No, we robots, bro. Human beings. That show, that's us.
Westworld was different, man.
And you're trying to wake up.
To
your programming. I've seen it in real time with people, man. When I'm talking to them about something, I can see the program, and they can't get out of it. I can see the loop they're stuck in, and they can't get out of it. Oof. I'm like, you stuck in that loop.
Yeah, Westworld was one of those
I've had some conversations with people, dude. I will talk to you dead in your eyes and look at you and talk to you and start pouring into you, and I can see you trying to break free. You trying to break free from it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen people, they'll be at my place of business. I know what we can do can help. I see the pain in them. And I can say everything I can say to them. And they'll walk out that door and won't come back. Because the programming, bro.
Yeah.
That's what we up against. That's
Yeah.
what I know that we're really up against is the programming.
Yeah.
And it's so strong that, man, you have to come in ready. There's no amount of me saying anything, no amount of you saying anything. Now, they can get hit with 7 times. You know, that's the whole thing. If you get hit with a piece of marketing 7 times, it takes that for you to
break a habit type of thing. Yeah.
Type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, so you came in and you did one thing. And that's cool. If that's what you can do, that's what you do.
Right.
But bro, you know the programming,
Mm-hmm.
and you see how long the programming we talking about is generational. The children of Israel, they's walking around how many years?
Long time.
Like 40 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's the programming. This goes back. We've been saying this stuff for ancient millennia, bro. Only work that we doing the kingdom work. We trying to wake people up to their Christ consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's their Christ consciousness? Understanding that they can do better. They can do more. Jesus said, you can, even the least amongst you will do greater than me. You can't do that if you stuck in programming. You won't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus said, I can't even perform any miracles in my own town because y'all don't believe it.
Right. Right.
Y'all could all got healed, but you don't believe it.
Yeah.
That's what it is, bro. That's what Westworld is. That's why I tell everybody, watch that show.
Westworld was one of those ones, man. That show was
What'd your wife
different.
think about it?
She thought the same thing, but we didn't finish season 2 because now it's been a minute. It's been close to a year that I can remember. I'm trying to think. From what I remember, season 2 was, I think they started off just doing so much. It was so different than season 1. It was like, from what I remember, it was so different than season 1 how they started that it just.
You gotta get to season 3, bro.
Oh, it's 3 seasons?
Yeah, you gotta, cause that puts it all together. It pulls it all together, even to what we got going on right now.
Mm.
Now I'm like, man, how y'all making these shows? I want to know
maybe,
who make these shows.
Maybe
I
I need to push through and get
you
the
gotta
season
push
3,
through.
man.
I had my dad. I was like, man, you gotta go watch Westworld. He started watching it. He came back and he was like, man. I was like, we robots.
Westworld is one of those ones, man.
And that's why I talk about Matrix so much, because it's the same thing. It's
Yep.
coming out of programming.
Yep.
People don't understand how you come out of programming. If you understand that you're programmed and you need to come out of program, you be running to a therapist. Like, because who are you?
So one of the things that they teach you in like meditation is like when you meditating, is to chant that mantra that you just said right there. Who are you? Who are you? And the key is to not answer it. It's to either not answer it or to say, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But you continue to chant that mantra. But you can only really understand that you are operating in this matrix through stillness. And
That's the only way.
And when you still,
Yeah.
you gonna feel some stuff that you ain't never felt. That's gonna, it's gonna show you in those moments of stillness. It's like, this is not what you think it is not what you think it is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So,
bro, I woke up in the middle of the night. It was maybe like 3:00 in the morning, and I just observed the stillness of the night, like crickets and everything. I'm just like really just sitting there and letting my senses like pick everything up. And even though there was movement, there was still just such a stillness to it, and it made me think about people who don't sleep well. And it's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who listen. And I guarantee you sleep with the TV on, turn that shit off.
yeah.
You sleep, you wake up multiple times in the night. You can't wake rested. It takes you more than 10, 15 minutes to fall asleep. Like, think about your body at that point. Just think about it. Your body is revved up internally. So when it's time to actually go to sleep, your body like, nah.
Yeah, you're not even resting.
You can't
rest.
You can't come down.
Right.
You can't relax.
Right.
So you so revved up. So again, back to that, this whole podcast really is about purpose. Stillness attaches you to that. Because if you're not still, that means you got a lot of wine in these wine skins.
Yeah.
And you need to pour that out.
Right.
Because how can I take in who I truly am? How can I stream who I truly am if that cup is filled with who I'm truly not? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Go back to that programming.
Yeah.
Who programmed you?
Right. That's it.
Who
That's
told
it.
you that?
That's it.
Where you get that information from?
That's it. That's it.
And the trauma just wires your whole nervous system. Hey, everything is protection. Oh no, I gotta protect myself, man. You know, so that's the programming, man.
That's it. That's it.
You have to deprogram to get to your purpose.
That's it. That's it.
That's a good title.
I
Man.
like that. Deprogram to get to your purpose. Yeah, that's it.
You gotta deprogram.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so many people, like you say, like, no, internet. I use that. I can sense the people who understand this.
Yeah.
And I can sense the people who just seem like they understand it. They ain't really got it yet.
Yeah.
But they trying.
Yeah.
You know. So from some of your episodes, like, how has that like impacted you and awakening for you?
You talking about just as far as just like the response from people, or you just talking about the episodes in general?
Because you listen to people and you hear these stories.
Man, so I don't know if you remember, but I was initially when I would have my guests on, I was initially having my guest lobby for Arian Foster to come on the show.
Oh yeah,
Arian
came on.
He did
right?
come on. Man, we had a wonderful conversation, and I would ask people, you know, what's one of the things that they learned, you know, about themselves in 2020, you know, just through the pandemic and just, you know, everything they kind of experienced in 2020. And one of the things that he touched on was, I thought was a very interesting topic, was he was like, man, he said, I dealt with so much guilt in 2020 because he said, here I am, I made more money than I've ever made playing professional sports. You know, just from like having like secure financial investments and things like that. I had some good people around me who, you know, who helped me. And people were starving, you know what I'm saying? People was hurting. And I could feel how genuine he was. And you know, to hear, going back to what you was talking about, you know, when we talk about people who make it, you know, to this idea of success, you know, this pinnacle of what making it looks like, you know, the adoration, the admiration, the money, you know, the fame. To hear him talk about, man, that don't mean shit. You know what I'm saying? I still had to sit with me. I still had to, you know, go through my own struggles. Like, I still experience like real stuff. That affirmed to me to let me know that, like, what I'm doing, you know, by having these conversations about purpose and like having people really, you know, look within themselves, whether they know it or not, it means something. And it just let me know in that moment that, like, just keep going, you know, keep it moving. You know, one of my biggest, like, you know, influences and inspirations was Nipsey Hussle. And what he would always talk about is, he would always say that, listen, one of the reasons that I named my thing the marathon is because he was like, a lot of times people quit, you know, when they start something. He said, but if you take a stop and you look back, you'll notice that you are way further along in your journey than where you started from. So one of the things that I've learned from doing the podcast and just having these guests on there is that, man, for the most part, a lot of us are just searching for the same thing. We all need the same thing. And a lot of us is struggling with some of the same things, man. But it does take a lot of work to get there. So if I could say anything to anybody out there, man, keep it moving, keep going. Like, don't stop, but do this work. And what you think matters don't always matter like that. All
right, bro. We're going to leave on that note.
No doubt.
Till next time, guys.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yep. Peace.
Peace.
La, la, la. You've been listening to the Inner Wealth Podcast on EYL.
Get out the matrix and live.
Theme song produced by Be Ready for West Coast Creations. I am Razcast, reminding you to take action, be proactive, be congruent. Get out of the matrix, get your mind right. We've automated mental health. at inception. Join the movement.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
Get out the matrix and live.